Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another movie time. I know it's been a while, and I figured what better thing to come back with than something about the culture. Is Black History Month. So we're going to do a review for a movie that really changed conversations, in my opinion, in households. So go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we jump into this. We are talking about The Woman of Brewster's Place. It is a movie that was developed, or I should say series, based on a book written by Gloria Naylor in 1982, and I believe the series was released in like 89. This movie currently on DVD is 3 hours. I believe that it's around the same time on Tubi. So if you want to watch it, go to Tubi. It is a good movie with phenomenal actors, some of whom this was their debut. So the story revolves around the lives of several women from different walks of life living in a poor urban neighborhood on a dead end street named Brewster's Place. It shows poverty, struggle, resilience, and the importance of community. So the movie begins with Maddie, who we know as Oprah Winfrey. Maddie arrives in Brewster's Place looking defeated because she is in a place that she never thought she would be. She is in an apartment that she never thought she would be in. And as she stands there, we get a flashback to what looks like her when she was in her 20s, right? And she is living with her mother and her father. And she ends up getting pregnant by this good for nothing, lighter complected local womanizer by the name of Butch Fuller. Now, Butch Fuller is full of himself. So he has the right last name. She is this young girl who is at home all the time with her parents. She's church going, she's all of these things. And he is the polar opposite. And because she's so naive and gullible, she ends up sleeping with him, getting pregnant by him, and not letting anybody, well, her mother knows, not letting her father know who the father is of her child. So her father thinks that it's by this good man named Fred that she's been dating, and that he'll honor, Maddie, because in those days, if you get pregnant, you either go away or you get married. So he would honor her by marrying her after she talks, and, after he talks to him. And she's like, no, Dad, it's not him. And he's like, well, who is it? And she refuses to tell him who the father is. Now, her mother knows, her mother's aware, but her mother doesn't want to say anything either because she's afraid of what the father will do if he knows that it's this guy who's the daddy. So what he ends up doing is he tries to beat it out of her. He slaps her across her face. You see her lip is bloody. He then grabs her by her hair. Now, we know that this is abuse at its finest. It's a tough scene to watch. Oprah does a phenomenal job, as does the father in this part, as does the mom. Like, when I say the actors are acting, they're acting. But he grabs her by her hair, flings her down to the floor, and begins to beat her. She is in a cradling position. She's pregnant. She's covering her stomach because he's hitting her all over. Like, he's hitting her on her bottom. He's hitting her in her face. He's hitting her on her arms where she's blocking her stomach, where she's trying to protect her womb. He is devouring her with this broom, trying to figure out who the daddy is. And she refuses to say anything. So her mother tries to intervene by pulling this man off of her baby, which is his daughter too, but she's trying to fight for her baby. And she ends up jumping on his back as he's whipping her with the broom that breaks in half, and he flings the mama to the ground. Now, we all know You can play around with certain things, but don't play around with our kids. Any mother that's worth her due is gonna make sure that she protects her kids. So out of nowhere, you see her pull out that thing in her hand, and she fires, and the glass in a lantern explodes, and a part of it nicks him in his face. And she tells him, if you lay another hand on my child, so help me, I'll kill you. He begins crying because he's so heartbroken that this young lady that he kept close, this young lady who he had all this hope in, killed his dreams by getting pregnant out of wedlock. She does the next thing because she doesn't marry him, and she leaves home. So she leaves home, and she ends up at some point staying at a boarding house where her friend Etta Mae Johnson joins her. As you all know, Etta is played by Jackie. She stays with her as her son Basil is born. She's helping her, and she decides, like, look, this town is boring. Nothing's going on here. I need to go where the men are, because Etta very much so wants to live the fast life. She wants to go to New York where she can find sailors, doctors, and lawyers. She's talking about Harlem and how the men there have money. So that's where she's going. And she tells Maddie that she could come with her. And it's clear that Maddie doesn't want to be alone, but Maddie's at a different phase of her life where she's going to do what she has to do for her son. So Etta leaves, and Maddie's working long hours at the shop as her son is cared for by an older lady, and she's living in this rat-infested apartment. She wakes up to the sounds of her child screaming because not only did the rat sit there and drink the milk out the bottle, but apparently it crawled on the baby, and it either scared the baby by crawling on the baby or bit the baby. I'm not sure. I can't really tell. But the baby wakes up hollering and screaming, and she immediately leaves. So she leaves the next day, has her baby in hand, walking from residence to residence as she's trying to find somewhere where she can stay. People don't want that baby. And if they don't want that baby, then they don't want her. Some of them don't want her and the baby because of the baby, and some of them don't want her and the baby because she's chocolate. We got to remember what time period it is, and a lot of people back then were not trying to board people of another race. So she was getting turned down left and right, and she's desperate at this point. So she's walking along the sidewalk, and she says, hey there, let me look at that pretty red baby. Let me look at that pretty red baby. And who says that but Miss Eva Turner? Now, Miss Eva is a character. I enjoyed her for the short time that we got to see her. She's funny, she's ornery, she's older, she's opinionated, she's been married multiple times and divorced multiple times as well. She is a mother. We don't know of how many children, but we know she has at least a son because she currently is taking care of her son's child that's been with her since she was 6 months old, Seal. So she welcomes her into the home, tells her that her and her son are welcome to stay there. She don't know how much she's going to charge her. Let her think about it because she doesn't board anybody. So just for right now, just stay there and just hold on to her money. So as time is going on, the kids grow up. We jump to like 5 years ahead, and you see that they're school age, and Miss Eva is still not charging Maddie any rent. And she's fussing at her about these kids because she sees how Maddie is with Basil, with constantly spoiling him, with having this boy who you see sitting here on the steps next to Seal, still sleeping in her bed with her at night, with not letting him sleep by himself because he's afraid of the dark. Not saying that it's, a problem for him to be afraid of the dark, but make him see, that he can do it, that he's capable of being in this situation where he stays in a room with maybe a nightlight or something like that. So Miss Eva throughout the thing keeps talking about how one day she's not going to be here and all these other things. And Maddie not believing her because a lot of older people who are mean don't pass. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is one day she passes. Her son and daughter-in-law come back to attend the funeral, and they end up taking Seal with them. and it's just Maddie and her son. Maddie decides to buy the house using the money that she set aside that entire time that she never paid Miss Eva to maintain the home. And she remains there taking care of Basil. Now, we don't know exactly how old he is in the movie. I'm sure the book says so. I'm going to say he's probably in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. And we see that this man cannot hold down a job. Basil, in my opinion, is just like his daddy. He grows into a spoiled, lazy, good-for-nothing man that's disrespectful and entitled. Some may say it's genetics with the nature versus nurture thing. Some may say it's environment. Either way, because of his mama and because of his pappy, this is who we see. This man who has all these expectations and does nothing. He won't even clean up around the house that he's living in with his mom, that his mom pays all the bills when he can't even keep a job. So one night, while he's supposed to be just out and coming right back home, he goes to a bar, gets into a fight, gets arrested, calls his mama because we find out that in the fight, he killed a man and injured a police officer. So Maddie, against the advice of the lawyer, decides that she's going to put up her house as collateral to pay his $25,000 bail fee, right? Which is a big deal for it to cost that much in the 80s. She, for these couple weeks, he has him home and he's cleaning and doing this and doing that. And right before the trial, he drops her off at work, never to return. And we won't hear nothing else about what happened to him after that in this movie. As a result of him not showing up, his mother, after all these years, after that house being paid off, is forced to give up her home and move back to Brewster's place. When I say the music that's playing as she's all somber and she's leaving and getting in that taxi cab with all her things to move from her house to that little rickety apartment, oh boy, when I say you feel the pain and you see the pain in her eyes, you feel and see that pain in her eyes, okay? The music is playing and Oprah is acting. And we get back to that same room that we saw her in at the beginning of the episode, that she's standing and looking at the walls like, oh goodness, look at this. Look at them walls, y'all. You can't tell me it's not some mold, mildew, some droppings, a little bit of everything going on in them walls, the way them walls look. They going through it. Like, this is how the apartment looks when she moves in, meaning they don't even clean the thing up before she goes in there. It's run down and it's rough. And we see her welcomed by a young woman who's extremely excited to see her. That woman is Seal, who's played by Lynn Whitfield. Now, Seal was Miss Eva's granddaughter, so they have a bond immediately. She now is a mother herself, and I think she's married because she has a ring on her finger at that point, but I'm not sure. But she has her daughter, and she has this guy named Eugene. Now, Eugene is another good-for-nothing man in this movie. This movie got a whole bunch of good-for-nothing men, and Eugene is another one of them. This is Eugene when he came home after being gone for all these months, right? So in addition to constantly leaving her, he treats her and her daughter terribly, acting like they're always bothering him or holding him back. He always is in and out of the picture. He doesn't like Maddie, and Maddie doesn't like him, but Maddie loves his daughter, okay? This is his beautiful daughter, Serena. Maddie loves his daughter and her mother, and she takes joy in being around Seal. She even tells Seal that she doesn't know where she would be if it wasn't for her, where she would go, because, you know, she's estranged from her family. I don't know if her parents are living or not, but there's a lot of pain in her life. Like, she's experienced a lot for this boy who left her hanging, who now has her basically in a neighborhood where she never pictured herself to be. So we find out that Seal is pregnant, adding to an already strained financial situation. She wants to keep her baby. She's excited, nervous to tell him, but excited. She tells him, and he doesn't hesitate to tell her to get rid of it. They go back and forth about it, but one day, after he fusses and complains and all those other things, and he loses yet another job, she goes ahead and goes through with it. So he gets what he wants. And y'all know what he does shortly after he gets what he wants? This man decides to tell her that he found a new job in Maine and he has to leave right away. Now he changes the location. First he says Maine, then he says somewhere else. And she understands very quickly that he's lying, that he's running out and he's leaving her. And he is not trying to hear what she's saying. And they're going back and forth as the baby, little Serena, is there. So they're arguing. And while they're arguing, while her and Eugene are fighting and she's begging him to stay, the baby sees a roach heading towards the electrical socket, right? It's crawling in the electric socket, and she grabs a fork and she pokes the electric socket, and the baby is electrocuted. Y'all, the scream that her mother let out when it happened, I felt the first time I ever watched this, the goosebumps on my arms, because I've never experienced that type of loss. I've never experienced that type of tragic event with my child. And I don't want to ever imagine what that feels like. I have, however, seen what mothers who've lost their children experience, and it really does take a piece of them. So to sit there and to know that you're arguing with this good for nothing man who, as a result of arguing with him, and y'all look away for a moment in time, she ends up dying, because that would happen. And you see him, you see that little bum Eugene standing behind her. Guess what he does after this? He leaves. He doesn't even stick around for the baby's funeral. So Seal isn't eating, she isn't crying, she isn't speaking. Maddie is taking care of her. Following the funeral, we get this very emotional scene because we see Seal braiding her hair and doing all these other things. Not Seal, Maddie. But Seal is unresponsive. She's not talking. She's not even responding when they talk to her. So one day, Etta looks at her friend and she's like, look, something's going on. She, I think, is trying to kill herself by starving. And Maddie is like, it's not going to happen. So she goes in the room and she tells her, I'm not going to let you do this. And she gets on that bed and she begins to rock her and rock her and rock her. And as she's rocking her back and forth, she says, come on, let it out. Come on. And I was crying like she was rocking me. Because you can feel the emotion in that scene, and you see her go from this shell of herself, this numb person, to hearing her cry. And she cries throughout a lot of scenes. She's crying while she's in the bathtub. She's crying while Maddie's doing her hair. She's crying while she's being put to bed, because the grief is so heavy and she's been holding on to that pain. She was numb. So now she's experienced the feeling. So now Maddie feels like, okay, we're getting somewhere. She's feeling something. Well, later on, Maddie goes in to check on her, and the apartment is empty. Seal ends up leaving without even saying a word, because she later, when she comes back, lets her know that she had to get away. She had to start over. But of course, Maddie doesn't know when she's going to see her again at that time, and it leaves her kind of brokenhearted, right? We got Melanie. I'm going to call her Melanie. She changes her name to Kiswana or something like that, but I'm going to call her Melanie because that's what her mother named her, as Melanie. We got Melanie and Leon, right? Melanie is played by Robin Givens. Now, Melanie is different from most of the residents that are here because, unlike a lot of the other ones, she's chose to live there. I personally feel like she's running from what her mother is, trying to create her own path, trying to have her own impact. But I don't like how she goes about doing it, because she tends to look down on her mother for her mother being successful. Now, she and her boyfriend are new to the building. They're moving in together, and her mother doesn't know that the boyfriend is moving in with her. She, because she wants to have a greater impact, ends up starting a tenants association to make improvements around the housing area, while he is an artist who has various grants to do Shakespearean plays and things of that nature to bring arts to the community. So he currently has a play going on at the community center. As I said, she changes her name to Kiswana because it sounds ethnic. Her parents are wealthy and disappointed because their daughter has dropped out of college to live in Brewster Place, where she believes she's going to, have the most change for the Black community. So we see her as she nervously waits for her mother because her mother is coming to visit her. She doesn't even know her mom's coming. She's just staring at the window and she sees this nice car pull up, and it doesn't take her long to know that that's her mama. So she's hurrying up and running around the apartment to hide stuff in the studio apartment because she doesn't want her mother to know a guy is there, right? So her mom comes in. We learn very quickly that she basically feels like her parents are sellouts because they have money and they live in a certain area, when I personally feel like she herself is wrong. Her mother shouldn't feel badly for doing better for herself. I know my family came to this country literally to do better for us. The sacrifice that was made by my grandmother coming over here first and doing what she had to do to make sure that her children can come over here one by one, on both sides of the family, for me to be a first generation American, like seeing how that all played out for my family is of significance. So for this girl to act like she doesn't come from a lineage where her parents made sacrifices for her to be where she is, it gets on my nerves. So when her mom gets up there, her mother and her go back and forth a little bit about the situation, and she ends up calling her mother a stuck-up ninja who's ashamed of being Black. Now, excuse me, you see her mama? Her mama is dressed, okay? Her mother is put together, but just because her mother is dressed and put together, that doesn't mean she's ashamed of being Black. So her mama is going back and forth with her, telling her the history of her family, letting her know, like, look, my grandmother was this Indian and my grandfather was Bayesian and da-da-da-da-da, and they worked hard to get us to where we are. So she looks at her and grabs her, and you can see how she's looking at her, and she says, "It broke my heart when you changed your name. I gave you my grandmother's name, a woman who bore 9 children and educated them all, who held off 6 white men with a shotgun when they tried to drag one of her sons to jail for not knowing his place. And you needed to reach into an African dictionary to find a name that would make you proud. When I brought my babies home from the hospital, I swore to whatever gods that would listen that I would use everything I had or could get so that my children would be prepared to meet this world on its own terms, so that no one could make them ashamed of what they were or how they looked, whatever they were or however they looked. And Melanie, that's not white or red or Black or purple. That's being a mother." In other words, you're calling me a sellout for making sure that you all can show up in the world any way that you desire to show up in the world. Meanwhile, you're selling out because you're trying to eliminate parts of me. When I say that she delivered that scene, she delivered that scene. So in my mind, Melanie can talk as much talk as she wants to talk, but she too doesn't know who she is. Sorry, y'all. That scene with her and the way that she went in, it's so powerful. Mrs. Tyson did her thing. All right. Meet Kora. Kora and Sophia. Sophia is a whole nother person, but we're going to get to her. This is Kora. Kora's on the left. Kora is a single mom of 6 kids, right? 6. As a child, Kora Lee was obsessed with babies, and her obsession continues even as an adult. She basically is seeking love from babies despite not knowing how to love them once they pass the whole baby mark. Once they talk back, she don't know what to do with them. Once they talk back, she insults them and calls them names and calls them dumb A's and says they're stupid and all those other things, which is a form of verbal abuse. She's been having kids since high school. She lives in a messy apartment and she's so busy watching soap operas and stuff that she's not paying attention to her kids. They're running amok around the neighborhood to the point where they often go to the trash can to eat when she doesn't give them what it is that they want to eat. So one day, Melanie finds one of Kora Lee's children out eating out the garbage can. She ends up going up to her house, talking to her, befriending her, telling her, like, there's other things that we can do. My boyfriend has a production of a Shakespearean play at the community center and I want you to come. And you could tell that Cora's just happy to speak to someone other than Miss Sophia, who always fussing at her, and to speak to another adult, because she always gets in arguments with Sophia. So on the day of the play, we see a different group of children. They're lined up, dressed, and ready to go, and they're actually listening to their mom. At the play, the children and Kora are all enjoying the performance. We see that it does have an effect on them, that the kids are engaged, and the whole verbal abuse situation is addressed because one of her sons sees a man that's in this donkey costume and says, "Mama, am I going to look like that?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Is that what a dumbass looks like when it grows up?" With her realizing that the things that she says affects her kids. By the end, she does seem to be in a better space with her kids. Back to Etta. We know this is her childhood friend, right? So she is here at Brewster Place because she's done with New York and she's on to her next thing. She still was up to her old tricks before she got there because she came in town with a whole nother man's car who she was dating, who she got tired of, who wouldn't buy her a ticket to fly there. So she took his car while he was asleep and took his underwear because he's a married man cheating on his wife with her. And she knew he wasn't going to file a report because the husband, okay, how do I say this? Because the guy she was cheating with is married and the lady's wife is the sheriff or whatever. So that would be hard to explain. So she's there and she's thinking about selling the guy's car to get some money to hold her over. After all of this running back and forth for years from one man to the next man, she wants more. So Maddie suggests taking her to the church to meet some of the nice widows or stuff like that. But she's not interested in the widowers. Instead, she's interested in Reverend Woods. Reverend Woods is another man that's trash. She is taken by his looks, by his wealth, and by his status. And he is taken by her looks and what he believes to be her status, because all the other women got on all types of clothing with no cleavage and it's those neutral tones or black, whereas she came in there, you see what she got on? Her red number, right? She looks nice. Well, he says he wants to take her out for coffee, and then he offers to take Maddie out for coffee as well. Maddie tries to warn her friend, like, this isn't the way you want to go. He isn't after what you think he's after, because she's thinking that she could be a first lady or something like that with him. So she sleeps with him, and after she's sleeping with him, she's laying in the bed and she's having a whole epiphany about, what she could be and all this stuff. And she looks over and realizes she's talking to herself because that man just wanted her for sex and he already put on his clothes. He takes her back home and he's chuckling and he's gloating about how, that's one of the things that he loves about you worldly girls, is that y'all worldly girls understand, that a man slips up from time to time. So he's a jerk and he's a hypocrite. You can tell that she's hurt, that she's disappointed, that for a moment she's broken. But as she enters Maddie's apartment, you can see her spirits lift when she sees that Maddie has stayed up all night waiting for her to come home, and she's listening to the records that Etta always carries around, which Maddie normally wouldn't listen to. Once again, showing how that friendship sustains them. All right, y'all, let's get to some meat. I've watched this before when I was younger with my mom. My mother, I think, had recorded some of the parts. Now, what I did not know was the true story behind these two women, because My mother didn't want me to see it. And I couldn't figure out what it was that she didn't want me to see. But what she didn't want me to see leads to a bigger thing here with this situation, because these two women are a lesbian couple. They're Lorraine and they're Teresa, better known as T, who moved to Brewster's place basically as a last resort because they have money and they have great jobs, but they're in hiding because they're lesbians. Lorraine is a teacher. I'm not quite sure what T is, but T is something in the office building as well. And Lorraine has been through a lot as a result of her being a lesbian woman. So this is our first glimpse, in my opinion, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, of this side of things on television. Regardless if you agree with it or not, they showed us what some homosexuals face then and even now. This situation has always been a taboo around sexual orientation, not just in the Black community, but other communities as well, especially when it comes to religious beliefs, right? People that speak against homosexuality. Here, in my opinion, we get a vulnerable look into the world of two women who love each other but have to be in this place at this dead-end road, in a place that they really don't need to be in because they both are successful women, all because this is the last resort for them. We see how they go from being treated kindly to being looked at and talked about because of this lady right here, Sophia. Sophia is a hot behind mess. Sophia is one of those typical older women that don't got nothing better to do than sit there and worry about what you have going on in your life, right? So Sophia spreads rumors, she spies on them, lies on them, watches them, and is constantly focused on what they have going on, even though she's supposed to be a married Christian woman. She's causing all types of issues and calling all types of attention to Lorraine and to T. While in a tenants meeting, before Lorraine gets there, she's even talking about them, talking about how everyone been there and talked about it. And as Lorraine comes in, she's talking about, you see what you've done? Moving in here with your nasty ways. Well, you ain't welcome here. You hear me? You ain't welcome here. And she's standing up and she's making a scene. And Lorraine's sitting there like, what has any one of you seen me do except leave my house and go to work just like the rest of you? Is it so disgusting for me to speak to all of you on the street even though no one speaks back to me? Is that my crime? Meaning, y'all aren't speaking to this lady just because she likes women? What you think she gonna do, like you? That's the part that frustrates me about this whole situation. I cannot stand how people can't just accept people for who they are and understand that just because you're a woman and she a woman, that don't mean she wants you. She don't want you. So Miss Sophia says, oh, don't sit there like little Miss Innocent. I'll tell you exactly what I seen. I wasn't going to mention such filthy things, but you done forced me. You forgot to close your shades last night, and I saw you. I saw the both of you. There you was, standing in the bathroom door, dripping wet and naked as you please, calling on to the other one to put down her book and come over and give you a towel. She's standing in that bathroom door with your naked behind. I saw ya. I saw ya. I saw ya. I saw ya. I said, what? Now, I ain't gonna lie. The way she was looking and gripping herself and making her face, that's the face right there, the face that you see up there. When I tell you I laugh because you really don't have anything better to do, you sitting there talking about her, looking at the other girl while she's naked, while you obviously were watching the both of them. So what are you? What are you doing, Miss Sophia? What are you? Thank goodness for people like Ben. All right? People like Mr. Ben, the janitor guy, custodial man. because he says, I guess you step out of the tub with your clothes on to make it easy on Jesse's eyes. And everyone bursts out laughing. That's everyone but Lorraine, because Lorraine leaves in tears because her feelings are hurt. Because here she is in a tenants meeting, just trying to be a part of this community that she's now living in, just trying to help out by taking notes. And this situation of her choice, well, I don't even want to call it a choice, because I don't feel like it's a choice. Her decision to move to this area because of who she loves has caused so many issues for her. And here she is yet again being pulled into the mess. So she leaves in tears. Ben consoles her. At one, she doesn't want to go back home because T didn't even want to go to the thing in the first place. So he tells her, she can join him in his apartment. They have tea, and he tells her about, his daughter that he no longer is in contact with, and that he doesn't have a relationship with her. And she tells him about how she no longer has a relationship with her parents either, because of her decision to tell them the truth about who she is. It's a sweet scene, especially because he said that he noticed very early on in the neighborhood that she seemed like a nice person. And despite how mean people are, to her, he's there for her and he can be her friend. Lorraine is more what do I want to say? She's more afraid, right? She's more sensitive about her sexuality because it's caused her to not be accepted. She got kicked out at 17 when her parents found out. She has lost her job. She's a teacher. Her family has disowned her, all because of who she loves. Whereas T, her girlfriend, is far more confident in herself. She's the one who is frustrated about them moving from place to place to place to make sure that Lorraine feels good. So we even see her, despite all of her strength, get tired of the way that everybody is treating her. And at one point, she kind of has a little bit of a breakdown as she's preparing her meatloaf, and Miss Sophia is watching her like she's putting on a show, and she starts throwing the different ingredients at the window because she's tired of Miss Sophia always watching her, to the point where she starts crying. Her girlfriend is embracing her, and Miss Sophia still trying to stare out the window talking about a mess. This is Cece. Cece is a tyrant to the neighborhood. Cece is a gangbanger. Cece and his guys sit there and they do drugs and they terrorize people and they do a whole bunch of negative things by that wall, right? Cece ends up getting into a little thing with Lorraine because she laughs at something that Melanie says, and he calls her a whole bunch of disrespectful names because of her sexual preference, right? You think that's the end of it, but it's not. One day after a fight with Teresa, Lorraine goes to a party on her own. She ends up changing her mind right when she's about to go, and she tries to go to Mr. Ben's house, but she forgets about the block party that they're having to bring money into the community to get an attorney to help with the tenants association. So she's confronted by Cece, who holds a knife up against her as he walks her down the pathway, and he ends up walking her past a bunch of guys. He slaps her and he R's her and leaves her there. Now, you can feel the fear as she's being ushered into this area where she knows she's going to be assaulted. And you can see how messed up it is that these guys saw him walking her to the corner, having an idea of what he was going to do, and nobody stepped in to stop. Ben, the neighbor, ends up going to the wall to look for some stuff to throw some things in because the block party, they're trying to clean up and do whatever. And he finds her on the wall, and he tries to help her, but she thinks that he is Cece, so she's saying no Cece, no Cece, and she grabs, I can't remember if it's a piece of wooden plank or a metal bar or a brick, but she's hitting him in the head. She beats him so badly that he's unconscious. I'm not sure if he's passed or not, because at the end of the thing you see Lorraine screaming and hyperventilating, kind of having a panic attack in the, well, no, let me not say that. She's at the wall first, and Maddie finds her in bed, and they're trying to assist, and she's swinging like the plank to hit people because she's still in shock. Lorraine gets put in the ambulance at some point. The music finally stops that's been playing at the block party. TT comes down. T sees like it's a whole bunch of commotion, and one of the neighbors who was previously kind of rude to her says, you know, your friend, it's your friend, go check on her. And she's hollering and screaming for her as she's covered, and you can tell she was assaulted. Her clothes are ripped. There's, you know, it's bad. Maddie, who originally was the one who came into this community defeated, no longer wanted to fight and was angry, is staring at this wall. She's looking at this wall. That picture right here, that's how good Seal looked like when she came back and told him that she had a man and all that other stuff now. And she lives in New York City. This is the wall. This is the wall where all the trash is, the wall that blocks out the light for the plants, the wall that cuts them off from the community, the wall that prevents other people from coming in and them from going out. This is the wall where the assault occurred, and she is tired of staring at that wall. And she turns her anger into action as she picks up a metal bar and she starts hitting that wall, breaking through that dead end wall. As she's doing it, the music is playing, and the other residents start joining her one by one as they smash through the wall. It is raining by this point, and they are powering through that wall as police sirens are going, and they're feeling like they're going to get arrested. And Maddie says, well, once we get arrested, we'll just break out of there too. And it just shows this sense of belonging and community and this resilience that these women have in the face of adversity. And it ends with them cheering as they can see the other side of the wall. This story shows love and loss and bonds that are formed for these women in difficult circumstances, and their strength and their perseverance. It is a powerful example of just a snippet of what is faced for some African American women and some of the struggles and challenges that they had in their environment. Each person's journey shows a different experiences, but in those experiences, you get to see there's still hope, right? To me, one of the things that I loved most about this is that it showed community. And if we're honest, that's what a lot of this is going to have to be about. That in order for us to be better as people, that we're going to have to unite, no matter what our circumstances, no matter what our differences. You guys, let me know what you thought about this video. Did you like it? Is this something that you want to see me do again? Hopefully you can hear me and I did it right. Until next time.